Hello, Jake.
So I'd like to introduce John Morris, who is a member of our advisory board, and also people are not aware of this, but is the editor of Travelability Insider, and has helped us for the last 2 years edit what I think is probably one of the best, kind of newsy, outlets and resources that we've developed, and so he's helped us with that. And I had a conversation, so just to set the stage, John was in a car accident in 2012, I believe, and the fuel tank exploded and ended up as a triple amputee, and he has one arm and a hand left, and he has taken up upon himself, I think so far, since 2014 when you started the blog, and he has taken 900 flights, stayed in 500 hotels, and has been essentially, prior to COVID, homeless. And homeless in a way...
by choice.
By choice. He wants to write a book about it now. So just see, but he traveled so often that he traveled an average of 310 days a year. So he's very familiar with the, with hotels, and he's sort of like there are food critics and there are movie critics, and because of his travel experience and wide experience, he's become an accessibility critic with airlines, with hotels, with attractions, and he sort of brings these things out. And so one of the things that he had brought to my attention was this whole issue of how showers, how difficult. And I started to follow one of the Facebook groups, the Accessible Travel Club, and somebody was posting, I think it was Sylvia Longmire, that she took a trip to go to a music festival in Houston from Orlando, and she was staying overnight, and in every single hotel she couldn't take a shower, and just and all the hotels she stayed in, she wasn't able to bathe. So I contacted John. He said, "Oh, this is just typical." So I asked him to prepare a shower shaming session. And so that's what he's going to do, and he's got some pictures, and so John, take it from here.
Yeah, well, thanks so much. I think the first thing I need is the clicker to advance the slides.
I can give you that.
Thank you. Well, I'm happy to be here. Obviously going to talk about shower shaming, as Jake said. There's no nudity in this event. So we're going to keep this very PG. I think I'd like to start by just talking about from the data that I've collected, which, as Jake said, I've stayed in more than 500 hotels as a wheelchair user, and I'm big on spreadsheets, so I catalog and document everything. And from, I think, 500 hotels is a fairly large sample size, and based off of that, I've been able to determine that there are major non-compliance issues with respect to the ADA in hotel bathrooms more than 80% of the time. I typically use a roll-in shower, but sometimes I'm forced into a room with a tub, and those have an even higher rate, nearly 90%, based off of the data that I've collected, of significant issues that could impact disabled people's ability to use those facilities. Now, I just want to go very quickly through some of the requirements for accessible bathtubs and roll-in showers. I'm not going to get into granular detail here. You'll be able to download this PowerPoint later and reference some resources on my own website. But the main idea here is that bathtubs and showers are required to have accessibility features in particular locations to ensure that they are useful to the people who are using those facilities. Some of the things that we expect to see are grab bars in the appropriate locations, handheld shower spray units or nozzles so that people can bathe themselves more adequately and easily. And of course, a seat to sit on in the bathtub in the shower. And so I'll go through some photos here first for bathtubs. This is what an ADA compliant shower or bathtub should look like. And if you sort of zoom your focus in there to the seat, you'll see that it has a mechanism by which it can securely attach to the side of the tub and legs that fit into the tub to ensure that when someone is transferring, that seat is not going to move and it'll be a secure place on which to transfer. Obviously, each of us who use wheelchairs have a different set of physical capabilities and challenges, but one thing that is generally common as a need for all of us is to ensure that the surfaces that we're transferring onto or the things that we're holding onto be sturdy and secure, because if those slide out from under us, some pretty terrible things could occur. And this, again, is something for you to access later. It's the ADA design requirement for roll-in shower. There are actually two different designs. This is the most common and I think the most accessible in my perspective. And we see that it has a built-in shower seat, grab bar that people can use to hold on to or balance themselves, shower controls that are within reach. We'll see that the soap tray is way out of reach, but that's not something that's covered in the ADA regulations, so maybe in the future the government and the Access Board can work on that. But this is a great shower, and I know I'm supposed to shame hotels, but I'll give this one props. It's the Salt Lake City Marriott City Center, which I absolutely love. Fantastic hotel. And moving to Las Vegas, this is a different design that is shown in that schematic from the ADA design standards on an earlier slide. I don't like these because water escapes from these much more easily, but some hotels prefer to design this way. And again, we see everything is within reach and in the appropriate place. A great example of what a shower should look like. But now I want to talk about or show some examples of what's not good. Here is a Ritz-Carlton. I'm not going to actually shame and name the cities, so we're just going to go with the brand in these photographs. But luxury hotel, you would expect accessibility to be, certainly on an acceptable level. But we see that this shower chair is on the other side of the shower from the controls, and so certainly not able to use that for me and many others as well. And this one here is at a DoubleTree. It doesn't have a shower seat at all, so they provided this portable chair, but unfortunately its configuration is such that I had to turn it around and shower backwards and reach the controls over the back of my head because of where this armrest is. And I don't know what's going on at this Hilton, what they were thinking in installing this shower chair in the way that it was, but it made for a really interesting showering experience. This is something that a lot of hotels do. This chair is more secure than most, but it's impossible to keep the water in the shower or in the bathtub. these plastic shower chairs are oftentimes unstable, and you have to count on the person who assembled it knowing what they were doing and making sure that it's secure. If this hotel had the proper seat that I showed earlier, it would have been a fine shower, but in this case, they didn't have that equipment. This one here is at a Days Inn. I don't typically stay at budget hotels. I'm more in the mid-range space, just because I love to chase loyalty points. That's sort of one of my hobbies. But I did a little study some years ago about budget hotels, and my statistics from that study proved to be pretty much in line with the numbers I shared earlier. I found that 87% of them had major issues with accessibility. And one thing that we see here is a lack of level entry into the roll-in shower, and so that makes it not roll-in at all. And then a whole lot of other things going on here. This Spring Hill Suites didn't even have the portable plastic chair, so they brought me a chair from the dining room. It was really slippery. Not safe at all, of course. But this next one, I think, is really going to take the cake. They brought this one from the outdoor patio or the pool area. Hard to transfer over those armrests, and this was a Courtyard Marriott. So yeah, a lot of these challenges obviously are impacting accessibility, and we can see how it would be difficult for people to use these facilities. But you know, we talk about liability and compliance and the fear that Jake brings up on the part of hotel owners. And you know, I think that in these examples, there's a worse liability than an ADA compliance lawsuit, and that's a customer being injured in the process. And so this next photograph, or actually, oh yeah. This next photograph was a Delta Hotels by Marriott. I stay in a lot of Marriotts. And it's a portable shower stool, and it collapsed underneath me. And I was very fortunate in that I didn't hit my head on the sink that's nearby or on the shower bench that is on the opposite side of the shower. I was uninjured, and so that's fantastic, and I'm grateful for that. But this is why the ADA requires a sturdy, secure shower chair that people can use and rely on to withstand their body weight and to be properly secured in the bathroom. This, I think, should be the biggest concern for hotels with non-compliance because if I had died, that I think would have been very costly. I have faith in my family for avenging my demise. But I asked my readers I do a survey every 2 years of my readers, and I asked them when they're booking hotels, do they have access to enough information? And 88% of them said that the information that hotels provide about accessibility is insufficient. And one of the things that I've tried to do on my website is to provide very detailed information about accessibility in the hotels that I stay in and review for my readers. And this includes measurements, information about the accessibility features that are located in those facilities, as well as photographs as well, because as the saying goes, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And if you are sharing a picture, I hope you're writing the alt text to describe the image as well. Maybe not in 1,000 words, but anyway. And to the DMOs here, one of the products that I've developed for the hotel industry is an e-course to help with demystifying the challenges of accessibility. And if you'd like to chat with me about how we can get your local hotel partners access to this e-course that has 54 modules on hotel accessibility, I'd love to chat with you. And so with that, turn it back over to Jake.
Okay. So, okay, we've got 5 minutes for questions. So does anyone have any, before I ask a question, does anyone have any questions? Can you take the mic back? Thank you. And can you identify yourself and the organization you're with?
My identity is Meredith Teakin. I'm with IBCCES. So I don't use a wheelchair, but working in this space with other, different needs, even I go places and notice things, and I'm just shocked by the data of the non-compliance. What should people do if we notice non-compliance? Is there somewhere to report it? How are so many locations not compliant? Like, how can that be?
Yeah, I need the microphone back.
Okay. Let's get another mic, okay? So I think there's another mic there too, so sorry. But I can tell you my perspective on this because I've been looking into it and I wrote an article about it.
I accidentally skipped over this slide in the search for the really bad shower, but one of the things I hear a lot from hotels and businesses in general about accessibility is they say, well, we got checked out, our building is brand new, it's certified and all of that, but government agencies perform a lot of safety checks and certifications on new construction, but something that's left out is the ADA. There's no ADA inspector that comes around to verify that a building or a property is ADA compliant. And so that is sort of a misunderstanding of many business owners. They assume that they got this brand new building or a remodel has just been completed in the hotel and that it's very accessible. Well, of course it is, but the reality is that's not the case. And a lot of the people who are involved in the process of construction and architecture and design, they might think that they're ADA experts, but they're actually not. I get emails all the time from architects who are looking for insight and confirmation of assumptions that they've made about accessibility. And in fact, here's one of those emails. It's very tiny print, but essentially I was asked that we think that the ADA says this, and in fact for roll-in showers there are two ADA standards, one specifically for hotels and others for another for other public accommodations. So your local gym, if they have a shower, they need to have a roll-in shower to be accommodating, but it doesn't require the built-in seat. And this particular architect said, well, we're concerned about there might be liability of the built-in seat. What if it, disconnects or falls out of the wall? But they don't realize that the portable chair is much more dangerous. If the hotel is constructed properly and the seat is secure, that can go a long way to ensuring a positive customer experience. But I think that the reality is that a lot of hotel owners and the people who are working on construction in these properties are just ignorant of the ADA requirements. And I don't want to cast aspersions on anyone. I think that there are certainly some circumstances where in a hotel remodel it was too costly to come into compliance, and that's skipped over in certain circumstances. But generally, these are honest mistakes.
Yeah, so I think it really, it's fallen through between the cracks is what's happened. So you have a local inspector who inspects the hotel, and they don't inspect the ADA room because they think that's a federal law. So they leave that to the government. Well, the government's not going to inspect 17 million bathrooms in hotels. It's not realistic. So it's fallen between the cracks. And this is where the DMOs can come in, because at renovation levels, at new build levels of hotels, because these are, I think John's right, they're sort of honest, ignorant mistakes. They're just, they're just not aware of this. And the destinations know that there's going to be a new hotel probably 3 years ahead of time because it requires so much permitting and in terms of development. And this is one of the reasons I'm trying to explore this whole thing with hotel management groups, because they need to know about this stuff and because it affects them. And with Suzanne Mellon, because she's completely plugged into owners and developers, because and I'm bringing her in because I'm wondering if accessibility and sustainability can affect the value of a hotel property at sale, because that's going to get their attention. So but I think it's just general ignorance out of it, and then the DMOs can basically educate their hotels. Anytime there's a renovation, they could bring somebody in. They can take this PowerPoint that John has and show it to them. So you are critical to actually this new area. So Ron?
I have to take off my Royal Caribbean hat because I agree with you, and I agree with everybody here. We talk about accessibility hotels. So to answer your question, really, there's a lot of ways you can remediate this, and John's outlined a couple of them. Sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. You can go back to the property and talk to them about, this room is not accessible to me, and talk about what needs to be made accessible. The people who certify the hotels are generally local building inspectors. They're required to do that because, there's a U.S. federal standard, but all the building code standards are related to state and local laws. So there are ways for them to validate the room has been validated against ADA guidelines. Usually the federal standards relate all the way down to state and local guidelines. That's another remediation opportunity to go back to the inspector's office and say, listen, you've got this wrong, this is the building, and things like that. One thing you all should also know that a lot of hotels we talk about chains, we talk about the individual properties. Many of the properties are not owned by the chains. They're individual franchises. That's the other complicating factor that you run into this. So the situation is complex, but there are different ways to remediate these types of things. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you can file a complaint with the Department of Justice, and you can send that through. Now, knowing from how the regulatory process works in DOJ, they see a pattern of complaints, and then they'll take action, because that's generally what happens in DOJ. They don't take action on a single complaint, but if they're getting multiple complaints against a single property or a particular franchise or a particular brand, hotel brand, then they take action. So there's different ways of remediating, but I think Jake also mentioned the opportunity is ADA is a minimum standard. And sometimes we have challenges meeting the minimum standard, but ultimately the goal is to usability by people with disabilities. You have to go above and beyond ADA standards to make the bathroom or the stateroom more accessible for people that can use the room itself. So the thing is education, and that's important, and it's still an ongoing journey for all of us. So those are my few comments, but I wanted to share some specific examples of how you may be able to remediate and the level of education. It's just continue to educate everybody on the process. So thank you very much for your presentation today.
Okay, I think that's it. Our time's up. Thank you, John. And thank you for all the work you've been doing with us. So, Andrew?
Thanks again, John. We have one last session before we're going to take a break this morning. So I'd like to welcome Eric Lipp, founder and CEO